Prudence, you can smile.
Sorry?
Don't be so serious.
Okay, that's right.
So you're waiting for Serge, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, Prudence.
Hi, good morning, Serge. How are you?
Hello, Alain. Good morning.
Good
Morning, Serge.
Good morning.
Morning, everyone. So should we be waiting for Ali?
No, because I can't even reach him because I don't know where he's at. So we can start without him.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay. Good morning, everyone. So we're going to be discussing on the calculation of CVA using Monte Carlo on an American. In this talk, first of all, I will define what a CVA is, and afterward, I will explain the algorithm to compute the value of an American option, and later I will show the different steps to compute a CVA using the least square method. And at the end, I will give a demo of the code that I implement in Python. So what is a CVA? a CVA is just is defined as a credit value adjustment. Is the difference between the portfolio value on the risk-free and the portfolio value when we take in consideration the counterparty default, which means that when the counterparty failed to satisfy his obligation. So in just a short word, the CVA is a market value of a counterparty credit risk. So mathematically, to compute the CVA in continuous time, it's just the integral of the multiplication, the product of discounted factor times the expected exposure times the probability of default with the loss given default. But in discrete time, we just compute with different time step. And the loss given default is derived by the formula 1 minus the recording rate. Is just the amount of what we lose out of what has been given. So in our presentation, I will explain how we can derive the expected exposure at a given time t, the probability of default in a given time frame. Here, the probability of default is a cumulative. It's cumulative probability of default from time t minus 1 to time t. And the discount factor, sometime I will show an example now. When it is one cash flow, we can just use 1 divided by 1 plus r to power t. But if it is a continuous time, we can use exponential minus rt. And the expected exposure will be derived, the estimation of expected exposure will be derived from the cash flow matrices where we will get from the Monte Carlo simulation. Okay, an example of one single catch. So suppose not that I make a loan of $100 million to a counterparty who is expected to reimburse me in 1 year. So the expected exposure here is 100 million, and we can set the probability of default as 0.75. That means that we have a 75% that the counterparty will not be able to meet his obligation to.
That's quite high. Will you do business with someone like that?
Yeah, it's too high. It's just an example to.
You're almost sure to lose your money.
Yes.
But I saw this as 0.75%.
75%, which is 0.75.
No, I agree. I think it's not reality probability.
Yeah, it's too high. It's too high.
Maybe 0.775%. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so and the recovery rate here is 60%. That means the loss given default is 100 minus 60%, which is 40%. That means I will be able to lose 40% of the amount that I gave.
Yeah, so, maybe you also got confused here. Usually the recovery rate is 40%. Usually, it's even at a standard value. So you have two recovery rates on the market: 40% and 35%.
Yeah.
Or sometimes 25%. You could have more on thing they call project finance. Go to 75%. They call project finance, but it's usually 40%.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Go on.
Yeah.
Let's use your number, just like, plain number.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So as I defined earlier, the CVA is the difference between the portfolio value when we do not take in consideration the counterparty with the present value after we take in consideration the counterparty credit risk. So here, I evaluate the fair value without the counterparty, which is the 100 million times the discounted factors, which gives me 95.24 million. So when I take in consideration the counterparty credit here, earlier here, the CVA it can be viewed as the expected loss on multiple catch. That means that it can be viewed as the expectation on a binomial model. So the random variable here that we will be taking is default. And if I want to evaluate the expectation, I will take the probability that we will default here, which is 70%, times the value of the random variable, which is 60% times the 100 million. And I got 0.45 million. And the other value of the random variable is when we do not default. And when we do not default, the probability here is 1 minus 0.5 times now the value of the random variable, which is 100% of the total amount, and which give me the 99.25. So now I need to do the sum of those two values, which give me the expected value on this binomial model. And afterwards, I will take the discounted value for this quantity, which is 94.95 million. So the CVA is just the difference between those two values. And I get 0.29 million. So that's an example of computing a CVA on one single catch flow. But we will see in our presentation that it is a multiple catch flow on an American option. So
this is a good example because I think it would be good, not now, maybe to go a bit deeper on this example after this presentation, because it would be good to be able to calculate the CVA directly without doing this difference. So, so it's for you to look later, because you can calculate it without doing the difference. It's very good to understand, because I have the feeling, and this is a very common error, people confuse CVA and expected loss. Because in credit, this is why the difference between credit and counterparty risk.
Yes.
It's very important to understand credit risk and counterparty risk. And if you get confused, then there's a problem. Because when you have a product like that, which is a loan, there's a credit risk on the loan, and there's a counterparty risk on the loan, which is completely different. It's very important you understand what they are. Your credit risk on the loan is the risk to the person that you give the loan to. There's a credit risk. But the counterparty risk is not the risk to the person you given the credit to. Let's say there was a bank that is guaranteed or something like that. So usually your counterparty risk is not the risk to the client. It's a risk to another counterparty. Let's say there's a broker that is guaranteed the loan, or there's another bank that you're using to do that loan. So your counterparty risk is not to the client to which you're giving the loan. That is a credit risk.
Okay.
So let carry on, but I think you be confused here. It's very important you know the difference.
Okay.
So I'm just looking at 75% times 60% times 100 million is 45 million, no?
Yes, it's 45 million.
Yes. Yes.
But you wrote 0.45.
Oh, no, here is 70%, if I convert to be 0.75 times 0.6 times the 100 million. I think that will give me 0.45.
That will be 45 million.
Oh, 45 million. Okay. Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Yeah.
So 45 million is your credit risk. That's what you could lose. It's your credit risk. It's not your counterparty risk. That is your credit risk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your SV. But counterparty risk is something else. But carry on. It will be good that when you finish, you go back and try to see difference between counterparty risk and, because counterparty is a counterparty, right? It's someone you're doing business with, and usually you're just afraid that if he owe you money, it cannot give you that money if when you need it. You know, if it default, which is not credit risk. It's not like you give a loan to someone. Usually it's not your counterparty in this case. Yeah. It's a very difficult for a loan to explain. Let me take an example, right? Let's say you have the best example to understand is okay. Let's keep the loan. So usually, let's say you have a company like Total, or a company like any company, or like a utility company. Yeah, the utility company want to raise money. They need a loan. Yeah, they need to raise money. So they go and see, let's say, a bank, Barclays, and ask Barclays to raise money for them. Yeah, Barclays now go on the market and raise and do bond and issue bond on the name of Total, issue 100 million loan. Now another bank or another investor now go and buy the bond. When you buy the bond 100 million, it means that you're giving a loan to Total, but the loan was issued by Barclays, so you're going to pay the money to Barclays. Barclays is going to cut his fee and give the money back to Total. Yeah, so the credit risk is the credit risk that Total default. Yeah, is the if Total default, maybe that loan 100 million is going to be left. If you say the recovery 40%, you can only recover only 60 million. You can only recover 40 million on the 100 million. You're going to lose 60 million. That is and then if the probability of Barclays to default is 1%, then you could calculate the expected loss. All right?
Okay. Yeah.
That is different. But now think about it. What happened if Barclays default? You see? Barclays issued the bond for Total. Sometimes Total doesn't default, but your counterparty risk is with Barclays because it's to Barclays that you gave your money.
Yes.
It's like when you buy a house, yeah? So someone is selling you a house, but you give the money to the solicitor to pay for your house. So your counterparty risk is not the one who's selling you the house, is the solicitor. So counterparty risk lies with people you're doing business with, your counterparties, which are different to actually the company that might need the money, which is your credit risk. So that is very, very important, and lots of people don't know.
Okay.
The counterparty risk is you need to identify what probability you need there. So if you were to do this on this example, you have this default probability 75% or whatever is the total default, but you need to know the default probability of Barclays, and you need to know your exposure. Okay, your exposure could be whatever you've calculated here, which is let's say the 95 million or whatever is the exposure. Now you need to use that and use the probability of default of your counterparty, and then okay, if this is the exposure and at the time I want to get that money, Now my counterparty default, which is Barclays, because it's Barclays, we're going to collect the money and pay you. What happens if they default then? They will have a lot of debt and everything. They will have to liquidate their book, and you might lose that money.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to make sure you understand.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. So in our case, we want to compute the CVA on an American option, and so we will need the expected exposure and the probability of default. But let's notice that the CVAs can be evaluated with different methods. One way is the Monte Carlo simulation, and this method is time-consuming in the sense that in the Monte Carlo simulation, we are generating multiple, a large number of different parts, and we will reach the convergence for infinite many parts. That will make the running time a bit long. But we have other methods known as sensitivity-based methods. Here, the probability of default can be estimated as the 1 minus exponential of minus lambda t, and lambda here is the hazard rate. The hazard rate is just the probability of default at the time t condition on the probability that there is no default in the previous year. And sometimes it can be estimated as the spread divided by the 1 minus r. So when we are evaluating the probability of default at the time t, which should take the difference between this quantity at t and t minus 1, because the probability of default is on a time frame. So
just a quick note before,
yes.
if you go back on the slide, it's good you could call this maybe delta PD or PD delta T, because the way it's written here is usually used for cumulative probability.
Okay.
So this quantity, you say PDT equal 1 minus Q. It's not the difference. So if you want to calculate PDT, you just do 1 minus QT.
Yeah, okay.
But if you need to call this delta PD or just PD delta T, whatever, but there's a difference. You need to.
Yes, which is the cumulative probability of default. The difference.
This is the, yes, exactly.
Yeah, the cumulative, yes, exactly. Okay. Thanks. So are we going to show some different steps in order to compute the CVA? The first step here is to generate some large sample of stock prices. And those stock prices are derived directly from the stochastic process differential equation, which is defined by this. S here is the underlying asset. R is the the risk-free rate. Sigma is the volatility, and the W is the standard Brownian motion under risk-free valuation. So before we reach to this differential equation, initially the R was considered as the drift term, but when the measure is on the risk-free neutral free risk, we consider the nu as the R of t, which is the inter risk. And Q is just a measure that that quantify that we are in the risk neutral. And we're going to solve this couple of differential equations in order to simulate the different parts, SI. Afterwards, we're going to now evaluate the expected exposure at a different time t. And those expected exposure are derived directly from the least square methods, which is just a sequence of cash flow matrices at different time. And when we derive the different cash flow matrices, we will evaluate the average at each time across all those parts. And then the CVA will be just the multiplication of the expected exposure times the probability, the cumulative probability of default, and the discounted factor. So the price of an American option is just the fair value of the discounted, as the expectation of the discounted payoff. So in a case for European option, we just take the expectation of the discounted payoff on the maturity. But here for an American option, we want to compute the supremum of the expected value of the discounted payoff at different time. And we reach the supremum when at the time t, where the first instance where the payoff is larger than the value of the price. So these different steps show the price using Monte Carlo simulation. And the first step, as I mentioned earlier, is to simulate the different parts by using the Euler scheme method. And the second step now is when we start building some sequence of cash flow from the maturity. And so at the maturity T, we build the first cash flow, which contain the value of the payoff exercise at that time. And in our case, in the case of European option, we just stop at step 2. We just take the average of the value in the cash flow matrices there at time t. But here now for American option, we are looking for the time t where we're going to exercise, which might be t, the maturity, or even before the maturity. So then we start building some cash flow matrices, and we go one backwards. So going one backwards, we evaluate what we call continuation. And the continuation is just the expectation of if I want to evaluate the continuation at a time ti, I need to take the expectation of the discounted factor of the cash flow at t plus 1 condition at the stock price at t. So it's with this the expectation now that we're going to estimate the value by using linear regression to do that. And afterwards, we compare the cash flow exercise at time t with the continuation value at time t. If the cash flow is greater than the continuation, we just exercise, and then the price will just be the exercise cash flow at that time. But if not, we just set the price as the continuation value. And we do that until we reach to the time t before the initial time. And then at t equal to 0, we just discounted the value that we got from the cash flow at t equal to 1. And we do the average of all those quantities, which give us the price. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, at this step 6, we needed to evaluate the continuation, which is a very important step in the algorithm. So the continuation is just we built a vector that contains the discounted factor of the exercise payoff at T+1, condition at the stock price at T. So that's the expectation. And then we now can use linear regression to estimate this quantity. So we set y as v and x as st, and then we do the normal linear regression. So in the algorithm here at the step 7, we need to notice that whenever the cash flow at time t is greater than the continuation that we just evaluate, we just set the price as the payoff at that time. But if not, we just set the price as the continuation value that we got at that particular time on a specific part. And then we do the same thing until we reach T1. Okay. So after we evaluate all those, we are building some matrices that we call cash flow matrices that contain the exercise payoff. And for instance, if you have n parts and we have
can you go back? Can you please go back one step?
Yes. Okay.
So you define the C. What is C?
C is the continuation. The
Okay.
continuation at time t. At time t. So at time t, I have the stock price initial, the initial stock price at time t. And I already evaluated the cash flow exercise at time t+1. So the continuation is just the expectation of the quantity condition on the value of the stock price.
I just want to make sure that because that continuation value,
yeah,
you normally don't you only use it to do a check, right? Do you use it as the actual result value? Because I think you need to make sure that you're using there are two possible values.
Yes.
For your payoff, there are two possible values.
Yeah.
One value is just let exercise now, and if it's a put, the value is just the maximum between 0 and the strike minus S. That is the exercise value. This is one possible value.
Yeah.
What is the second possible value?
Is the discounted value of the next payoff,
so
at time
it's
t+1.
Yeah, so okay, that's the right answer. So is that is a discount value. So it is not the continuation value. The continuation value is calculated just to compare to the payoff if I exercise today. If the continuation value is more, then you use the discount value. You don't use the continuation value. If the continuation value is bigger, you use the discount value. But if the continuation value is small, you just use the payoff today. Yeah, that's the only thing that I wanted to make sure you understand, because you said you use the continuation value.
Yes, thank you. But I noticed from the paper that you sent, the thesis, it says at that page that they noticed that in contrast to simulating the early exercise, when we are in the case for the exercise price less than the continuation, we set the price as the maximum of the continuation with the exercise at that time. That's the equation 3.9. That's what the mentioning.
Yeah, you need to. I mean, you need to read the article as a whole. You have to make.
Yeah.
You have quite a few algorithm.
Yeah.
And probably this is just one of them.
Okay.
But you don't use the continuation value. There are two possible values, like you said,
Yeah.
which makes sense. The continuation value is used to compare.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So from the generation of the cash flow matrices, we have some distribution of payoff at different time across all those parts, all the end parts, and our expected exposure at a particular time t is just the average of the price that has been derived from the least square method from the algorithm that I just presented now. So let's do an example. We implement this algorithm in Python, and we take as parameter the initial value S0 equal to 1, the stock price as 1.1, the maturity, which is the horizon at t equal to 3, and we take the risk-free rate as 0.06, and the volatility as 0.2, and the number of steps that we divide our interval from 0 up to 3 as dt, which is t divided by m. In our case here, is over 3 years, and the dt is 1 year. And the recovery rate has 0.4. The spread is taken as 0.01, which is 100 basis points. So with all those values now in our code, we generate. So to generate the first stock prices, which is the part of all the underlying assets, we needed the initial stock price, the K. No, we don't need the K. Yes, we need the K. We need T. We need the R, which was this stochastic differential equation that we simulated. And for our setting, we just get those parts for 8 at different time. So in our algorithm, what we need to do now is to first evaluate the exercise payoff. And in our case, we are evaluating the price for an American put option. So the exercise price, exercise payoff here is just the K man, the maximum of K minus X and 0. So that's what we evaluate there. So the stock price matrices is what is given here, and the exercise payoff is given by these matrices. Now,
Okay, that's very good.
Yes, thank you. So now we start the algorithm. The algorithm say that initially we need to start at the maturity, t equal to 3, which is step 2. So at the maturity, we just consider the value from the payoff that we just evaluated. So we evaluated the payoff at time 3, which is those values that we got. Okay, and the cash flow at time t equal to 3, it just we set the column t equal to 3 with these vectors. And if it was an European option, we just take the average of these columns. Now,
oh no, what you just said is not true.
If it is European put option, if it is
Yes.
European put option, we exercise at t equal to 3. So we just take the average of this gauge flow at time t equal to 3.
But it's
across
something
the
you're
data.
forgetting. It's not just that. You don't. The price is not the average.
The discounted
But discounted to where?
at time t at the maturity t equal to 3. Okay.
Discounted to 0, yeah?
Okay. The discounted.
Discounted to 0.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So which value you're going to use for the discount factor?
So it's here it should be exponential of minus r t. T here is 0.
No.
Pardon?
T is 3. If it was a European, you need to use time.
Yes. Okay, so if it is an European option, we take the discounted value of the payoff, and the discounted factor is exponential of minus r multiplied by 3 multiplied by all those values, and then we take the
I mean, when I say that is to get the price, but if you want to get all the cash flows, this will be the large cash flow. At t equal to 2, you just discount everything by 1, and at t equal to 1, you discount everything by 1 again, and at t equal to 0, you discount everything by 1. So at 0, you will have what I said, you discount by 3.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. But if you want to evaluate the price, we just take the average at time t equal to 3.
Discounted by 3.
Yes.
Because the price is always today, right? You don't get a price in the future. 3 is in 3 years. So this is what you will get in 3 years. If you want to know the value today, you discount it.
Okay.
You never take a payoff in the future as a price.
Okay.
You discount it to today.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So the next step now is to okay. So we are going backward. So we start at maturity, and we need to go one step backward, which is time t equal to 2. So at time t equal to 2, we need to look at the payoff, the matrix of the payoff. And when we look at t equal to 2, we see that at part 3, 4, 5, we have 0 as value. So we don't pay more attention on those values. And now we need to
why do we not pay attention?
Because we just we want to evaluate the expectation on the discounted payoff at t equal to 3 condition on the stock price at t equal to 2.
Yes, but there's a simple thing that you maybe make it easier for you to understand. I mean, we want to know if we should exercise or no. That's what we want to know. We want to know if we should exercise or no. But if it's 0, would you exercise?
Yeah, okay.
You know, you need to understand actually what it means to exercise in real life. When you buy an American option, like an American put, if you see that the value is good for you, just call the broker and say, I want to close it now. Let's just exercise. Just give me my money. I'm happy with what I'm seeing. Let's just close it now. So you can call the broker and or you could assign. You could just press a button, and you just assign to your counterparty. Say, now I want to exercise. Let's close it now. But if his value is 0, would you exercise?
No.
No, because that's the lowest possible value. So if its value is 0, you keep waiting, right? You keep waiting. You know, you can only exercise the positive value.
Okay.
You cannot exercise when it's negative.
Okay. Thank you. Because we are looking at the time where we're going to exercise, so we just, I mean, not consider those values, and we now focus on the parts 1, 2, 6, and 7. So on those 4 parts now, we need to evaluate the expectation of the expected value. Expected value at time t equal to 3, condition on the stock price at t equal to 2, which is what we got from this first matrices. So the y here contain the value of the discounted payoff at time t equal to 3. And the x here contain the value of the stock price at t equal to 2. So we can now find a polynomial that estimates as linear regression of y versus x, which what we got as conditional expectation function there. And after we got the expected, the conditional expected function, we need to make a decision, check when we're going to exercise or not. So we value the continuation. We just plug the vectors, the x vector in the polynomial, and we get the continuation value. So the exercise payoff here is just the k minus s, because we are in a put option. So we evaluate the difference between k minus x value. We take the value for price whenever the exercise payoff is greater than the continuation. So when we look at this now, we see that 1, 2, and 6 are the parts where the exercise payoff is greater than the continuation. So we just take the value as the exercise payoff there. But at the part 7, we see that the exercise payoff is less than the continuation. So here we take as the discounted value at t of the exercise price, exercise payoff at t equal to 3. So from there now, our second cash flow matrix at t equal to 2 is just the value that we got from this payoff. And the next, because we need to also to go one backwards again at t equal to 1. And we do the same thing. We first check the stock price and the exercise payoff. When we look at the exercise payoff at t equal to 1, the part 3, 4, we get 0 value there. So we cannot exercise at that time. So we just dismiss them, and we focus on the part 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So on those parts now, we're going to evaluate the conditional expectation, which is just the expectation of the payoff exercise at time t equal to 2, condition on the stock price at time t equal to 1. And that is what we get there. So we arrange the y vectors and the x vector, and we do the least square regression, which gives us the conditional this polynomial of degree 2. And similar to previous, we evaluate the values by just plugging the x vector into this polynomial, and we get the conditional value. And the exercise payoff is just the the difference between K minus X. So we also need to check the value where the exercise payoff are greater than the continuation. And from here, we can see that 1, 2, 3, 6, and 8 satisfy the condition. So our price will just be payoff at this particular time. And for part 7 is where the exercise payoff is less than the contribution. So we set it as the discounted payoff at time t equal to 2. And we got our cash flow matrix at t equal to 1. And from there now, to evaluate the American put option, at t equal to 0 from our algorithm, we just need to discount the value obtained in the cash flow matrix at t equal to 1. Here, we multiply those values by the exponential of minus RT. And we take the average across all the 8 parts, which give us the value of American put option. But our focus is to evaluate the CVA. So we needed to evaluate the cash flow at time t equal to 0 as well. So those one are just the discounted value obtained at time t equal to 1 from the cash flow. And the expected exposure is just to take the average across all the 8 parts at different time. So that's what we put as a vector EE. So this a vector for 4 components. And our CVA is just the dot product between, because here we get 3 vectors, the discounted factor at a particular time t, you have a vector there, and the second vector is the expected exposure, and the cumulative probability of defaults at time t. So we just evaluate the dot product between all those vectors and multiply by the loss given at defaults. Our discounted factor at those different time frame is given by this vector. And here, the cumulative probability of defaults is just, we compute the difference between, if I'm in the first year, is the difference between the Q at 1 minus Q at 0, which is what we get there. But at t equal to 0 for the initial time, I just set it as 1, because if you plug no 0, if you plug 0 in that probability, in that formula, 1 minus exponential of minus lambda t, we get 0. So from there now we can take the product of the dot product of all those quantity discount factor, expected exposure, and the probability of default multiplied by the coefficient 1 minus R, which is the loss given at default, and then we get the value of the CV of an American put option, which is 0.0051. Thank you. So that's just the demo on from the previous from the code. So to sum up the talk, what we see is how to evaluate the CVA using Monte Carlo simulation. And the main point is to look at the expected exposure. And the expected exposure are estimated from the algorithm that we use for pricing using the Monte Carlo simulation across all different parts at different time. So one remark is that we will reach the during the pricing, we reach the convergence for infinite many parts. And in our case, we just take some few parts, but in the real setting, the number of parts are very high. That can make the algorithm to consume enough time.
How many parts do you think can be enough?
Maybe 20,000.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, 20,000, but which is time consuming.
It can be fast. Usually these systems are built to be vectorized. So they do all the path in one go.
Okay.
And usually in production, people use things like 150 path, 150,000 path.
Okay, okay. But okay, the other method to compute CVA using the sensitive-based method. I'm just thinking if the value that we get from the sensitive-based method can be compared to the value that we get using Monte Carlos.
You're talking about adjoint differential?
Yes, the FRTB is under approach CVA using this.
Okay. That's okay. Yeah, but they use that to calculate the CVA capital, right? Not the CVA, the CVA capital, you mean?
Okay, the CVA capital. Okay.
Yeah, the standard approach is not used to calculate CVA, to calculate CVA capital.
Okay.
Because you have, I mean, you have two things, right? You have the basic and the advanced. And people who calculate CVA capital, to calculate CVA capital, your bank need already to know how to do CVA, right? Because if you already to do the CVA capital, you should have a CVA desk. So
Yeah.
you should be able already to calculate CVA. So
Okay.
the regulator doesn't give you a formula to calculate CVA. They give you a formula to use your CVA sensitivity to calculate CVA capital.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And here, when we are estimating the cumulative probability at default, we choose this the spread at 100 basis points, and the credit default swap is just an assurance that we take against the counterparty. So I'm wondering how to generate those spread in the real setting. Because here in my setting, I just take X as 100 basis points in order to estimate the cumulative probability at default.
Yeah, so in the real life, you have different ways. Okay. Usually, like 50% of the counterparties will have like a CDS curve. So those spread, you just go on the market and you find them. They're called CDS spread. So there will be instrument to sell to protect yourself against a company default.
Okay.
And they will basically give you your default, the implied default probability. You have spread for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years. It doesn't have to be flat. It could be different for each year. Be a curve, okay. And then you need to bootstrap that curve. That is the thing you might come across, bootstrapping CDS curve. But that is only for half of counterparties usually. The other half will not have a CDS curve. Okay. They will, because maybe those companies that are not that big, or They don't do that much business, so they don't. To have a CDS curve, you need to issue bonds.
Okay.
Many companies that have a CDS curve because they are issuing bonds.
Okay.
But if you're a company that don't issue bonds, it's very unlikely that you have a CDS curve. Because like the example I took before, if a company is financing herself through bonds as an investor or as a bank or as a fund or as a mutual fund or pension fund, you buy those bonds, but at the same time, if you bought a lot of them, like 1 billion, you might say, I need to protect myself against this company because if they just go bust and the bonds is worth, only 40% of the value, I need to recover some of my losses. So you buy them because they are very attractive, they are paying some good interest, but at the same time, let's say they are paying 5% a year. You could go and see an insurer and say, I need some protection in case these bonds are worth less. And you buy a CDS from the insurer and you pay maybe 1% to the insurer. So you know that you're getting 5% from the bond. You're gonna, from those 5, you pay maybe 1% to the insurer, and the insurer will tell you that, okay, if this bond go default, we'll buy all of them and give you your money, and we manage the recovery. So that's what the insurer is like when they insure your car. Exactly the same process. And now the price that the insurer charge you, that is called the spread.
Okay.
It will depend how much the insurer will charge you. Basically, it will give you an idea on the default of that company.
Okay.
This is only for half of them. The other half now, you have lots of company where you don't have a CDS, so you don't have a spread. So what you would do is something very common. It's good to know. It's called proxy methodology.
Okay.
Proxy curve, things like that. So you try to estimate it somehow. Bank will have some methodology written down how they do it. So usually they use the sector company. They use the country or the region. They use the sector.
Yeah.
And they use the type of business, the sector, the region, and the rating of that company to estimate. So if by luck, let's say you have a company like, again, Total, that has a CDS. They actually have a CDS. And you have another company like an oil company in Europe that doesn't have a CDS, but they have the same rating as Total. You could maybe use Total CDS curve for them.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how people do.
All right. Thanks. So another thing I noticed from the algorithm here, when we are the first important point is to generate some path, a large number, a sample of path, and we make an assumption that we are generating those paths on the risk neutral measure. That's where we just take the drift term as the interest rate are. But in the real world measure, I'm not so sure how we will be able to generate those paths. But in a setting where we assume under the condition of risk neutral measure, it usually the interest free rate can be given, and then from there we implement just the Euler scheme. Yeah. So my worry will be when we are in a real world measure and not taking in consideration the neutral, the risk neutral condition. That's one point. And the other point is, as I noticed.
So your question is, why are we using risk neutral and not what you call historical or Real world means historical. They call it historical because you don't know the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you say real world, you mean the past. You mean what you've observed historically, empirically. Is that what you call real world?
So, okay. What I mean by real setting is that we are not putting off the risk. We are not neutralizing the risk because under the risk neutral measure, we just have the risk-free rate which we can have, and then we generate the path. But in the case where we know that okay, we'll be having enough risk when we are doing the generating the path. So that's what I mean.
So yeah, it's a good question. I mean,
yeah.
The thing, when you say risk-free,
yeah,
the CVA is what you call, the CVA is like a price.
Yeah.
So in math term, you say it is a martingale. So usually when you want to estimate something in the future, you want to know, let's say the stock market is 1 today, you want to know where it's going to be in 1 year. Yeah.
Yes.
You could go in the history and see how much in the past year it has moved. Maybe it went up 20%. You could say, okay, if we're using that historical prediction, we could say, okay, it's very likely to go up again, like 20%. So if it's 1 today, maybe it's going to be 1.2 in 1 year. I mean, that's what you're saying, the non-risk-free world, right?
Yeah.
But when you're trying to estimate a price or a CVA, you have to use a risk-free world.
Right.
Because basically for that example I just took, the only thing you could say that is that the price is going to be 1.
Yeah.
Because you have to be risk-free to estimate a price. If you start using all the setting, then you know it's not a price anymore. It's not going to be a martingale. A martingale, like a price, mean that it doesn't depend on the past. It only depends on now. So you can only, it's like in real life, you know, whenever you want to make a decision, you have to use all the information you have now to make your decision. So that all you have. Otherwise, you're going into a non-risk-free. That's why you have to, for CVA, you have to use risk-free measure. There are other risk measure where you don't use risk-free. For example, for capital, CVA capital, you can use historical.
Okay.
You can use historical, and you can understand why, because the CVA is an average, is an expected value. So when you look at the distribution, the expected value is usually in the middle where you have the pack. So usually to get something wrong there is very difficult because most value are there. So you have to use a risk neutral. CVA capital is in the tail, is a tail distribution value. So you will see that usually for CVA capital, there's something called PFE, counterparty risk calculation, which is very similar to the CVA, but it's not the expected value. It is a tail, it is a quantile value.
Okay.
People will use historical drift. They will use historical drift to simulate. They will not use risk-free because usually in this case they even have data for risk-free, to be honest. Because this is only for equities, but if you actually even for equities, usually you simulate a local vol. You don't simulate like a Black-Scholes like the way you show here. So when you want to do the CVA properly, it's quite complex because you need to have your vol surface. You need to have all the market data you use for pricing. So it's a front office measure. It's really risk-free measure where you need to know all the the market input. But when you're doing PFE, which is the risk of the CVA, you just go and use your time series, you get your drift, and you use that to do a simulation. But you're not going to be calculating expected value, you will be calculating some quantile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. So the last remark that I also discussed last time. So the evaluation of the CVA, if you want to get an accurate approximation of the CVA, those are built on the expected value. And the expected value that we compute mainly on this continuation, the expectation that we got from here, and we estimate using linear regression. But I understand that in a bank setting, we just take the linear regression at degree 2, and but if you, if you want to look at at a research level, and in order to get a better estimation, we could look up to better way of estimating this continuation value in order to minimize the losses there inside the computation of the continuation. Maybe the better algorithm that can be used in neural network to do that. So yeah, that's the remark that yeah. So and that thing is if it is in the case where we are in a continuous type, I'm not so sure. Maybe for different settings, maybe for different financial derivative, maybe we could get the expected exposure as a continuous function, which I would like maybe to see when, if it is we are considering the different financial derivative, what could be the expected exposure in those different settings. Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, there's never continuous time in financial product.
Oh, okay.
When you have your basically it's always going to be discrete, even though you could call any time of the day. You could say that, you could argue that in real life, if you want to call an option, you can call at 8 o'clock, you could call at any time. Okay. In practice, but in terms of pricing it, it will be discrete.
Okay. Okay. So yes, that's it. I want to ask what's the next step? And it's,
I mean, what do you think you want to do next?
Depending on the priority, in terms of in the same line of evaluation, the CVA, or because you share some different things to read, especially on FRTB, standardized approach, CVA. So do you think is a good idea to look at this one now?
Yeah. I mean, I remember maybe if I find it, let me have a look. It would be good to read the regulation, try to do like a 1 or 2 page presentation on the different what you find in the regulation, You know,
Okay.
what does it mean, the CVA capital,
Okay.
or the different regulation on the CVA. So to have like a 1 or 2 page presentation that summarized, basically, that summarized the documentation on the CVA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That can
Alright.
help you understand if you read that paper and summarize that into 2-3 presentation.
The presentation. Okay. And yes, that will also be okay if I can get some example, maybe a data on the sensitivity in order to maybe
No, you don't need. No,
don't
you
need-
don't
okay.
need to. No, you don't need to.
Okay.
Don't worry about that. It's
Okay.
mainly to understand. I want to show you an example.
Okay.
What I mean by I think I did something. CVA capital. Yeah. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Can you see?
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, the idea is to have something that kind of summarize. You understand the default risk capital, the CVA risk capital. So you have to. You remember I was talking you about credit risk and counterparty risk. CVA is counterparty risk. There is a capital for it.
Okay.
And credit risk is, so like I was saying, if a company issue a bond, and if a company go and see a bank to issue a bond, and you buy the bond from the bank, your counterparty is the bank. You have a CVA risk against the bank, and you have a default risk against the company issuing the bond. Yeah.
Okay.
And you have capital for both. So the capital for the default and credit CVA capital charge. And then, no, actually, no, forget what I just said about the credit. This is the default risk capital. This is CVA risk capital. They are both counterparty risk capital. This has nothing to do with the credit risk capital. Sorry, my mistake. These are both counterparty risk capital. Even in the counterparty risk capital, you have in the counterparty risk, in the counterparty credit risk, CCR, you have 2 types of risk. One is the default, the other one is the CVA.
Okay.
So forget what I say about credit risk. It's completely different. So
Okay.
this is CCR. In the CCR, you have a risk for which is exposure times risk weight. And there is a standard approach called SACA. There's an internal method. There's another standard approach called SA, an internal rating based approach, RIB. This is for, no, these are to calculate the exposure. You have 2 methods, and to calculate the risk weight, you also have 2 methods.
Okay.
And here to the exposure again, on the SACA, you have the credit risk mitigation approach and you have the standard method approach. So all of this is like summarizing the regulation. Now, if you go on the CVA risk now, you have, this is after the crisis, they added more capital. FRTB CVA.
Okay.
Go live in January 2022.
Okay.
And this is the scope. Only cover derivative transaction, non-clear through qualified CPP, margin on all regardless accounting treatment, including SFTs. These are one approach what I'll call you the advanced.
Okay.
Credit spread, you need that. You need MPOR, etc. And then this is the formula.
Okay.
Isn't that? And now you have the basic one. CVA sensitivity is not available, so it's bank really don't have a CVA engine.
Okay.
They use the basis approach. They use a basic is just K is just K there's a beta K reduced time 1 or beta KH. So this is like a one-pager summary. It would be good to do something like that to understand, you know, where all of that is coming from, to have this picture in your head.
Okay. Okay. All right.
This is something I did when I started a project at Natixis in 2020. And
okay. So from what I'm seeing now, and what you were explaining earlier, there is a big difference between the counterparty at default and the CVA risk, because even and all the two are can be classified in the counterparty credit risk, but when the counterparty default, that's where we can evaluate the CCR capital charge. But in the case for CVA, I'm not getting the point. It could be exactly the same thing, because
no. So the CCR charge is like you have a counterparty, right? You have a counterparty, and there's an exposure of 100. If the default probability of that counterparty is, let's say, 25%,
yes,
you can lose with a probability of 25% your 100. Yeah, you could use that. So your expected loss there will be something like 25,000. No, 25 million, let's say. But that is your CCR capital charge. So it is what you could lose. Boom, default, you lose.
okay.
But there's the CVA is different. The CVA is that, okay, your exposure is you went into a transaction. So you said that with the capital charge, you don't know how long the transaction is with them. You know, you don't care about how long. You just know that what is the probability of default, what is the exposure today, bang, I have my charge. But with the CVA, you could say my exposure is with them for 1 year. Yeah, it's for 1 year. And during the life of my exposure with them, my exposure can go up or can go down. Is there an exposure? Let's say, for example, if it's a loan that they're repaying you every month. If your exposure, if it's 100 million and they are paying 10 million every month, and it's a 1 year, you know that your exposure is going down, right?
Yeah.
So if it's something where your exposure is flat, you know that your exposure is flat. So the CVA take account of the path. So the time is like I told you, the CVA is an integral over the exposure through time. So that's why. So you in the CVA, and what is a way to maybe I explain it differently. The way to neutralize your CVA, and which is not going to neutralize your exposure. People can neutralize the CVA today when you have when you have exchange traded product. There's no CVA, and the way to neutralize the CVA is that, let's say you get into a transaction with someone, and the exposure today is 100. You get into a transaction, you have a credit risk with them. If tomorrow your exposure go to 110, what could you do to keep your exposure to 100? It's a question.
Yeah, not so sure. I'm not so sure about that answer.
Even before that, how can you actually even do to get your exposure to zero? If someone asks you let's say 100 pound, let's say just let's say 100 pound, they want you to borrow them 100 pound. What can you do to get your exposure to zero?
I will just take that amount multiplied by the discounted.
No. If I ask you, I said, please, Prudence, can you borrow me 100 pound or 100 RAM? What can you ask me? So that you know that you're not going to lose your money.
Sorry, sir, can I answer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Rock.
Take a collateral.
Yes. So you can, what will you ask me?
So I will ask you for maybe something which has an equivalent value.
What?
Or more.
What can you ask me?
What? Maybe a good, maybe, I don't know. A good Vivek.
You can say, give me your iPhone or your watch. I hold it.
Or maybe,
and then
or maybe we can even take a CDX, an insurance to a.
Yeah, not for 100 pound. Yeah,
Yeah.
not for 100 pound. CGS's notional are usually 100 million because they are based on bond. So for 100 pound, you say, okay, give me your iPhone or your Apple Watch. I hold it, and then I give you the money. So there's no capital charge risk. There is no counterparty risk. Usually, this is actually what bank do. I mean, if the bank need money, usually they have some paper, what they call bond for government bonds. They don't actually give the iPhone or the watch. They just give them the bond that they bought for the government, like UK bond, treasury, US bond, or European German bond. Give that paper, hold it, give them the money. I need the money now. In Asia, a lot of people, they have shares, but they need money to do business. They take their shares that they have in companies and go and give to bank and ask bank to give them the money to go and do more business. So people usually use collateral to borrow money. So usually some of your exposure is covered, but it's never going to be 100%. Because I mean, if I had that much share, I would not need more money. I can just sell a little bit of them. So people, what they do, they give some collateral, usually less than what they are trying to borrow. There's a haircut. Something, even when you take the collateral, you cannot value them because if I give you, if let's say now it's 100 pound that you want to give me, and I give you my phone. Maybe it's an old phone. You say maybe if I want to sell it, I will not get 100, 500. Yeah, I say okay, your phone is 300. You will reduce the price of the collateral. You apply a haircut on it. Because you don't know, it can just disappear and then you go and try to sell the phone, but they give you £200 and you still lose. So you need to value the collateral, but you still remaining with capital credit risk, capital charge risk, counterparty risk on the value.
Okay.
But now I was asking, now if tomorrow you want to ask because here the exposure is something that can change over time, right? Let's say it was £100, you were supposed to pay me £10 every month, and let's say 1 month you don't pay me £10. What can I ask you?
So I think if we take a CDX from
No,
another,
not CDS. Forget CDS for now. Usually when the CDS is done by the CVA desk, but the business, I mean, they don't. I'm a equity trader. I don't buy CDS, right? All I do is just I need collateral. So I'm gonna ask you for more money if you don't pay me one of the coupon. I'm gonna make a margin call. That's why CVA is mitigated by margin calls. And margin calls is a two-way street. So if the exposure go up, you will call them, if the exposure is 100 million and you're not happy to go over that exposure, if the exposure go up to 110 million, you call for 10 million.
okay.
Yeah. And if tomorrow it go back to 90 million, what do you do? You give them back 20 million. So every day bank they call, they exchange, every day. If the exposure is going up, I pay you back. So that's how they mitigate CVA risk.
Okay.
So when you go into a transaction, you have a credit risk. If you want to cut your CVA risk to zero, every day you exchange whatever has increased. So that is called collateral margin calls. Yeah, that's how you mitigate your CVA. And you see, when you do that, it doesn't mean your capital charge is zero. You still have the initial money that you went into. These are only the the movement in the market. But if you do not have margin calls, then you have the CVA that you calculated at the beginning in your presentation. If you don't have margin calls.
Okay.
But even when you have margin call, there's still some CVA, but it's a little bit more tricky. This is called MPUR CVA. This is called a margin period of risk that we could discuss. Because basically, between the time you default and the time that you get the money, because if you call in the collateral every day, right? If you call yesterday, you default today, there's still some time before you go to court and start recovering your money. So there's a period that you will not know. So you could even call the margin, but still lose, because let's say yesterday I owe you 110 and I paid 10, so it went back to 100, and today I default. By the time we go to court and settle, maybe you owe me 125. So I'm still gonna lose even if I'm calling collateral. You still can lose. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it would be good to have a look at the different documentation you have online to understand the default risk capital and the CVA risk capital. Just start with these two, it's already enough.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Yes, that's all right. So when will be the next meeting?
I mean, it depends on your progress. When you prepared, maybe we could, depend on your progress, we could do something late this week or early next week. It's up to you.
Okay. All right. So let's see, maybe on Monday.
Yeah, well, something like that, yeah.
Okay, Monday. All right. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serge. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.